It is February 6th, 2019, and here is a still shot of the president entering the House of Representatives for the long-awaited, controversial State of the Union address. And there are the ladies in white, we'll talk about them later. And here is Melania Trump, our First Lady, entering and greeting her guests. I had this full broadcast for you and the Stacey Abrams address. However, no sound whatsoever except for the scraping of my mouse. So I apologize for that. There are the ladies in white again, and they were wearing white in honor of the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage movement that eventually led to equal rights in voting and so forth. And the president's cabinet enters with Mike Pompeo. The speaker greets Vice President Pence, and the president acknowledges his wife, Melania, for her contributions to his presidency. You can see that the speaker did rise, although it took her a minute, and that happened throughout the broadcast. There's the ladies in white again, and that's pretty much their demeanor throughout most of the State of the Union address. They just sat there, although at some point they were cued to stand by the speaker. I noticed during the broadcast that the speaker was signaling her base very subtly from the. And as you can see, she's now reviewing her printed text of his remarks, even though she got an advance copy, and she seemed to need to refer to that printed copy several times. During this whole time, Vice President Mike Pence is relaxed and engaged and paying attention. And you don't really need to pay attention to him until much later. It's the Speaker of the House that we are watching closely for when she loses control of those dentures. I saw a hilarious tweet by a Brit who said, basically, woman, get control of those dentures. I can't do it justice, but it was hilarious. And that's a nervous tick, actually. If she were ever at the poker table with James Woods, that would be a tell. And so, Madam Speaker, don't ever sit at the poker table with James Woods. He will decimate you and take all your money. I thought this part of the speech was particularly wise and clever. He acknowledges the foundation set by some World War II veterans, and later on in this speech, a couple of men who, one was a prisoner of war at Dachau in Poland, and the man seated next to him was one of the liberators. That man with the red braid is acknowledged later on in the speech, and there Madam Speaker is, referring to her program notes to try and figure out where they are in the speech, because she clearly wants to be on top of things. And those two gentlemen sitting directly to the right of the lady in white are the veteran and the prisoner of war I was talking about. The president then turns to acknowledge Buzz Aldrin, one of the senior astronauts, and Buzz Aldrin gives him an appropriate salute and acknowledges the accolades from the audience. And I thought that was a very clever way of building on the commentary he had set forth with the military's accomplishments during World War II to remind us who've racked up a couple of generations of the accomplishments that generation who is rapidly passing away have won and the freedoms that they have won for us, and to go on the heels of that with the space program and promising we're going back into space sort of paints the picture for younger generations of what this country was built on. And you can see Mike Pence is still relaxed and smiling and, just basically unconcerned about the whole speech thus far. On the sidebar, you'll notice there are tweets from senators, and if you have the opportunity, by all means, stop the video and read these tweets because they are very telling. Senator Merkley had a lot to say, and none of it was good, and none of it had anything to do with what the president was saying at the time. So keep watching Speaker Pelosi. She cannot hide her reactions. There are a couple of times where she talks to herself while the president is speaking on things that she apparently disagrees with or doesn't understand why he's talking about it. Who knows? But her reactions are very interesting. And here we have a long shot where the ladies in white were actually standing up. And then the president goes into some discussion of the prison reform that just was passed, and the First Steps Act, which allows people to be able to re-enter society with a fair shot. And here are the ladies in white, some of them standing, and the Ocasio-Cortez contingent sitting and not reacting. There is a place where somewhere in this clip, I hope I caught it, where you can clearly see her gesturing to her base. And here is where I have to cut because I forgot I was recording, and I captured a tweet by one of the senators, Senator Patrick Leahy, and this is what he had to say during the speech. We truly need leadership to unify the nation at this time. After 2 years of division and demagoguery, President Trump has spoken some words about unity. Unfortunately, what the teleprompter giveth, the president's daily actions and hourly tweets quickly taketh away. We jump forward in time. He's clearly said something that made some of the cabinet happy, and then we go back and we see that the speaker has lost control of those dentures. And apparently at a point where the cabinet was happy, but she was not. And she's clearly reacting to what he's saying and not happy about it. And neither is Bernie Sanders. A condescending look from Gillibrand, and we move on. He makes another point, and that seems to be a good point, but Madam Speaker is struggling to control those dentures, and while she applauds, she has no real reason to stand and acknowledge whatever that point was. Due mostly to the fact that her nervousness has kind of gone off the rails now, and the dentures need to be corralled into place. Pence again, relaxed. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good point. She sits there. Doesn't applaud on this, wherever he was in the speech, she does not applaud. In fact, She has some little side comment to make right about here, under her breath. Yep. And the ladies in white, you know, can't be bothered to acknowledge most of what the president is saying. Pence, on the other hand, still relaxed, still engaged, and the speaker, not so much. Starting to really get uncomfortable. There's a long shot of the house, and she smiles at something, but it is not an amused smile, it's a tense smile. And now she's just very, very uncomfortable. Doesn't applaud, wiggles in her chair, an aside to Pence, and the ladies just sit there. And sit there and sit there and sit there. This next part is amusing. While these ladies who are championing the advancement of women, one lady stands up, not in white, and applauds. And I do believe that this lady is actually the first transgender, and she's wearing pink and wearing it proudly. The speaker again is uncomfortable. She's not really happy with what he's saying. Her facial expressions, she's lost control of her ability to speak with a straight face. And you can see the ladies in white are totally disengaged. I believe this next part is where the president talks about getting us out of the wars in the Middle East, and the speaker again has waited several seconds before sitting down. She's clearly in control, or at least telegraphing she's in control of the House, whether anybody likes it or not. And the ladies in white sit there and don't react. Amazing to me that these women just couldn't seem to get themselves together to pay attention to what the president was actually telling them. As we get into the meat of the speech, a lot of the things that he was saying as the speaker loses control of those dentures again affect them, their mothers, their wives, their daughters, and few of them stand for any of the things that the president says. Now the speaker just loses, her ability to not react, and it has to do with investigations not being productive when negotiations should be what is on the plate of Congress. And the speaker goes back to, where are we again in this speech, and how much longer do I have to sit here? Let me see if I can find out. Are things that affect them. Their sons serve, their fathers serve, their brothers serve in the military, and they can't be bothered to stand for us leaving a almost 20-year war. When the president talked about the family and unborn children and health care, these women, this affects them, their mothers, like I said, their daughters, it affects them, and they can't be bothered to show their support for things that directly affect them, both as legislators and as citizens, and I just find that appalling. absolutely appalling. There they sit. Oh, a couple of them stood up. But that front row where Ocasio-Cortez is, not, almost never stands up. Now the president goes to prison reform. There's the speaker signaling and takes her time sitting down, forward in time, and the president is talking about Prison Reform Act and this woman who's clearly moved. She has been released from prison, has changed her life, and now finally some of the ladies in white stand, but not that front row again. This is stuff that they actually advocate for. And even the first lady, or I mean, even the speaker stands and takes her time sitting down once again. More reaction from these ladies who represent women's suffrage movements, and the cynicism on that one representative's face is just astonishing. And they acknowledge the first man who was released under this new Prison Reform Act, and he stands politely. And then when the president acknowledges his efforts to reform his life and be a productive citizen, the man breaks into the most beautiful smile, which we will see coming up. Humble, wide open smile. Look at this. See? That's what prison is supposed to be for. To come out on the other end with a smile like that, where your face lights up. Good on ya. I forgot his name, but good on ya. Good job, well done. We skip forward again in time, and here is a good shot of Kirstjen Nielsen, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, and she evidenced strain the whole time, in my opinion, that she was on camera. Every time they would cut to her, she politely stood and applauded things that, most of her colleagues were applauding, but this look of strain on her face was, I don't really understand it. There were rumors before the beginning of the year that she wanted to retire from that position and move on to other things. Maybe the job is getting to her. I don't know, but I just found it very odd that every time the camera cut to her, there was this look of strain and tension on her face. There it is again. She's paying attention, she's engaged, but something is not right there, in my opinion. And the speaker is starting to show a little distractedness. Her attention is wandering. I'm not sure if she's bored or what's going on, but she's disengaged and not paying attention. And it's clear. But she will re-engage eventually as time moves on. I think she's at the point where maybe this speech is running a little longer than what she thinks should have happened. And it did run a little longer. And there she is controlling the situation again by waiting to sit, clearly evidencing discomfort. The president makes a point that most of the audience is in favor of, except for those ladies in white, and the speaker is still uncomfortable. Now, coming up, you're going to see some very subtle facial expressions and reactions from her. She's listening again and paying attention and not liking what she's hearing. And then, wow, somebody else doesn't like it either. We move forward in time a little bit, and then we see this reaction from one of those ladies in white. Interesting. Now, I believe that the president was getting into the immigration, border security, and human trafficking part of his speech at that time when the freshman congresswoman from Minnesota reacted that way. Klobuchar, paying attention, engaged, but not buying it clearly, but still paying attention. A couple of other senators, including Susan Collins, just, not reacting at all. Up next, as soon as the president says the word border, you can see Pelosi bracing herself and shaking her head. And there go the denture nervous tick again. At this point, a little further in the speech, the president is acknowledging this family, the great-granddaughter, a daughter, and a grandmother whose family just 2 weeks ago, home was broken into. Parents of the young lady were injured. I don't know if they perished or not in this break-in, but the president is acknowledging them as being victims of gang violence and MS-13, and you can see the speaker is fiddling with papers and then realizes, I better sit down, the president is speaking. Cut a few minutes later to Kirstjen Nielsen, Homeland Security Secretary, and that same strain, it appears to me, on her face. They're talking about her department and their efforts with border security, and she just, I don't know, there just seems to be something off. I don't know her, so maybe that's the way she looks when she's concentrating. And I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and say, I don't know. The speaker has been fiddling with the written text of the speech for a couple of minutes, and they then acknowledge the efforts of one of the border security agents, this man here, and then I want to know if Ocasio-Cortez is like asking, hey, is he talking about the Green New Deal yet? Because this whole block of women's reactions is so weird to me. And Mike Pence still relaxed and reacting to what the president is saying. And the speaker still very uncomfortable, still working those dentures, that nervous tick, she just can't control it anymore. Now we get to the part of the speech that just blew me away, and if we had audio, you would hear that it blew me away. He's talking about the women. He's talking about the women in Congress. He acknowledges that there is the largest contingent of women serving, and Pence stands up, and the women kind of just sit there, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, should we stand? Should we cheer for ourselves? Should we chant USA, USA? And even Ocasio-Cortez finally gets into the act and cheers for herself. Okay, great. Now that we've finally gotten that out of the way and Pence has had a good chuckle, the president says, but wait, you shouldn't sit down because there's more, or something to that effect. And he goes on to talk about women's accomplishments and so on and so forth. He acknowledges their applause. They stand again. Ocasio-Cortez must be wearing 5-inch heels because she's just having a real tough time standing anytime this president says something that affects her as a woman or her constituents. She can't bring herself to stand. And then he gets them with a zinger when he told them they should have stayed standing. Here they actually react, and Nancy is acknowledging them and prompting them to stand again. So, yay for the women in Congress, I guess, is what we're going to say about this particular part of the clip where they're all celebrating and congratulating themselves. And I just, I'm at a loss for words, really, as to their behavior during the whole presidential address. And then, break into chants of USA, USA, the only time they show any animation whatsoever. And then everything settles down again, and the speaker takes her time sitting down, has a few things to say, or maybe those dentures are bothering her, who knows. So then she reaches for the written text of the speech again. Where are we in this speech? How much longer do we have? Have we hit the high point of the speech yet? I don't know, but let me just try and pay attention a little bit longer. And says something that many people agree with, but the speaker is distracted. She's fiddling with the text of the speech again, and, once again, controlling the House by, oh gosh, the president's speaking. Let me sit down and pay attention again. And then they stand for something that's noteworthy, and she has a few words. As an aside to Mike Pence, here's Romney. He's totally unimpressed and probably thinking about his campaign financing at this point. Who knows? And everybody sits back down, and you'll see a subtle credit where credit is due, not a bob of the head right in here somewhere. Not sure right where it is, but it's coming up. It's very subtle. Oh, well, okay, credit where credit is due. And then the camera will go to the audience in the chamber, and you'll see Steny Hoyer, who is her second. So she's the speaker, and he is the majority leader. And there she goes. Anyway, Hoyer is the majority leader in the House, and he's standing up vigorously applauding what the president says after this little head bob of hers, which still hasn't come up. Mitch McConnell, kind of stoically paying attention. It's hard to tell whether he's happy or unhappy, but I know that afterwards he was very pleased with the president's speech, and I think her little head bob is coming up. No, maybe not. Maybe we missed it. But, applause, sit down, pay attention. What's he saying? She's paying attention. And there's that little head bob. Oh, polite applause. Yes, credit where credit is due. And some are standing. The white block of ladies are not. And there's Steny Hoyer giving sincere applause as his colleague next to him is like, when is this going to end? Because in truth, this speech was longer than was anticipated. And a few minutes later, the president makes a good point, and watch the speaker's reaction once she stands up. She seems to be paying attention still, polite applause, everybody stands. Well, not everybody, but, some of the ladies in white are standing. And so then, look, there's that hand, and she's signaling again. Then the president goes on to acknowledge this young lady who had cancer and her fundraising efforts. She's very cute, and she was it was fun to watch her. She certainly was taking in the whole thing, and the president, as he was speaking about her, gave her a shout out and said, "Hi, Grace." It was pretty cute. But then things got back to normal, and the speaker is listening, and she's kind of perplexed, like, what is he talking about? And, funny little subtle facial reactions from her. And I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for the side conversations she kept having with the vice president. And there's the one time you saw Chuck Schumer on camera standing, smiling, and applauding. So apparently something the president said met with King Chuck's approval. Well, and then he says to his colleague here, or there, right there, he says he's going for the abortions. So, not much approval for very long from King Chuck. And Queen Nancy's not real happy about this abortion controversy being brought up either. And the camera wisely goes to the Supreme Court. Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Roberts, Sotomayor just sits there staring. But, and the ladies in white, they're not going to applaud for unborn babies, even though they were unborn babies at one point. But I guess I didn't expect anything different from many of the people. And then here coming up, we're going to catch the speaker in an "oh please" moment. Very subtle expression. There it is. Little comments to herself. But whatever he said, the cabinet certainly was in approval. And I think at this point he's talking about, strengthening the country. He's bringing it back to the unity and working together rhetoric that he opened the address with. Now, you can't really see her reactions very well. She's not in agreement with what he's saying, and we're approaching the moment where he puts her and everybody else on notice that this is a republic and not a socialist country. And there's Bernie Sanders' reaction to that. Oh, bummer. And the ladies are sitting down. And Nancy just can't believe what she's hearing. She grabs the text again. She's, can't figure out where we are in the speech, but she tries to figure it out and is wondering, are the hors d'oeuvres at the reception cold by now, or or is the ice melting for the drinks, or what have you. But I think she's just going to give up trying to find where he is in the written text. And Pence stands, the Kushners, Ivanka and Jared stand, and this is for the part, I think, where he mentions moving the embassy to from in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and she's having denture problems again, apparently. But whatever he's saying as he moves on, he makes Dan Crenshaw, among others, very happy. And we want Dan Crenshaw to be happy because we like Dan Crenshaw. And since we can't applaud for John James from Michigan becoming the first Republican senator in, 40, 50 years, we'll applaud Crenshaw and go for another run when James becomes eligible again, should he choose to run. And now that the president is in his foreign policy part of the speech, you'll note that Vice President Pence isn't relaxed anymore. There's tension on his face. And he's still applauding, he's still paying attention, but he is not smiling and relaxed anymore. And the speaker is also has a few side words for Pence at some point in this part of the speech that the president is giving. And we're winding down, we're getting towards the end of the speech. Tension on Pence's face, Nancy's not happy, and I'm wondering what it is that Pence is so concerned about. I thought that he was a 100% supporter of the president, but perhaps not. And we move along, and again, she's wondering, where is the end of this speech? Can I find it? Where are we? And what else is he going to say that apparently I'm not aware of? And she totally ignores the fact that the president is speaking, because whatever he has said, she could care less about. But Mitch McConnell was happy with it, so good. And the president goes on to acknowledge a few more guests, including this next man. His name escapes me, but he was a survivor of the shooting at Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. And this sweet man is 81 yesterday, and he was being acknowledged as being a survivor of that shooting. And I have to say, if anybody is going to beat me on wonderful accolades, this man gets to beat me on an accolade. They're singing happy birthday to him, the House and the Senate and the guests. And even the president gets involved in the act by conducting as they sing. And it's the first time we see him crack a genuine smile the whole time. There we go. President gets in the act. That's pretty cool. And the reason why I say I bow to accolades is this sweet 81-year-old man received a higher honor than I ever could. One of my highest honors was, and he shouts, thank you. Even the speaker thought that was pretty cool. So one of my fondest memories and what I consider one of the greatest things that ever happened to me is on my birthday many, many years ago, all of left field at the old Tiger Stadium, not the amusement park we have now, sang me happy birthday when some of the guys around us heard my sister hand me a beer and say happy birthday. We were at the game for my birthday. And so I bow to this sweet man and his birthday accolades at the State of the Union address. And then the president went on to acknowledge these two. The man on the left is a Dachau concentration camp survivor, and the man next to him, who he is helping to be seated, is one of the remaining World War II veterans who came to liberate Dachau. And these two elderly gentlemen represent this generation that gave us everything we have in this country in terms of freedom and blessing by their roles. And so, 70 years later, here they are in Congress being acknowledged by their fellow citizens. And the former prisoner helps this soldier stand up again, and he salutes the president, and he had just previously saluted this soldier who came to liberate him. And I have to say, between the birthday greetings and young Claire and these two men, it's hard for me to say which guests. I think they're tied for first place in terms of who the president and the first lady invited to attend the State of the Union address. And then the president, a little while later, finished his remarks. Everybody stood, including the speaker, shakes hands with the president, and then he shakes hands with Mike Pence. And, you start to see some rustling in the crowd as people move away. And that was Grassley and McConnell sitting together stoically throughout the whole of the address. And now you see Secret Service making a hole, as it's called, as the president leaves the floor shaking hands with various people. And I will tell you, since there was no volume to this, we're not going to bring you the Stacey Abrams speech. There's no point in it. I can tell you that, in my opinion, her speech was all about her. It started about her and her family and her experiences, and it ended with her. Why the Democrats thought she was the appropriate person to present the rebuttal speech is beyond me. I can also tell you that the designated survivor, in other words, the member of the government who is secreted away in a secure place, should anything happen at the Capitol during the State of the Union, was the Energy Secretary Rick Perry. And that function is basically one person out of the government has to be not attending the speech because the line of succession in the State of the Union speech is President, Vice President, Speaker of the House, and then it rolls down to some other positions, but all three of those people were in the Capitol, and should anything go wrong, somebody has to be appointed, and it's called the designated survivor, to maintain order, law and order, and keep the government functioning should there ever be a crisis. So thank you to Rick Perry and his family for assuming that responsibility. It's not an off the cuff thing. Your life would change on a dime should anything go wrong. And fortunately, we've never had anything go wrong in the decades and years that we've had a designated survivor. Thank you for joining us today. That's all we have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this recap. This speech was in 1 hour, 32 minutes, 30 seconds, and I condensed it into 47:20-ish for me and the shepherd. We hope that you are well and blessed. We hope that you learned something from the State of the Union address. We hope that we see our country become more unified and less contentious. At least that's our prayer. As God has told us many times, if my people will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, I will heal their land. Until we see you again, take care.